What's going on, guys? So today's interview is about to be massive, guys. I am super excited to sit down and have a talk with Chris Van Vliet, guys. He is my favorite professional wrestling interviewer. He's a big reason why I'm going into broadcasting too. Well, I've always wanted to, but he's definitely inspired me a lot into this journey. So guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview, guys. It's absolutely amazing. The one thing that I don't like about it is, first things first, I took a shower, so my hair's all frizzy in the interview. Yeah, I literally just got off work and I thought I was gonna get home sooner, and I was already gonna take a shower, and yeah, so yeah, my hair looks pretty bad. And also that, man, I don't know what's going on, man. My audio, I haven't had this issue, but my audio is not synced with my video. So of course on a big interview it does that, right? I mean, it's gonna happen on one interview, but yeah, guys, it's still great. His audio isn't, it's mine. It makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. But without further ado, guys, make sure to smash the thumbs up button down if you guys enjoyed it. Check out my other interviews with JTG, with James Ellsworth, with Heath Slater, with Todd Grisham, with Muscleman Malcolm, Sean's Entertainment, Christian Miracle, Botch Guy. The list goes on and on and on. Just incredible. They're all there. Anyways, guys, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Also go subscribe to Chris Van Vliet. Anyways, guys, let's hop right into this video. I'll see you guys later. Yes, it's Eric Rowan versus Finn Balor for the WWE title. Why? That's what WWE Simulation likes to do sometimes. All right, guys, let's jump right into it. Oh, yeah, guys, after this experience, I'm buying a laptop, okay, an iMac, so we don't have to experience the bad video quality and the bad audio and the voice not syncing up with the video. That's very frustrating. I'll see you guys later. Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is one of the biggest pro wrestling interviewers in the world. He has over 280,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 84 million views on his channel. He has interviewed wrestlers from WWE like John Cena, The Rock, Batista, and even the Usos, to people in AEW like Chris Jericho, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, and even Sammy Guevara. He is the host of his renamed podcast, Insight, and the person who has inspired me with broadcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chris Van Vliet.
Man, I feel inspired. Thank you, Jared. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you making the time for this.
Thank you. Thank you. What have you been doing during COVID quarantine?
It's I feel like this is our entire life now. I can't believe it's been 10 months of doing this. And, we've all had to adjust our lives, but I've been doing a lot more of this. I was a big fan of being able to sit down in person and do interviews where I could look someone in the eye and shake their hand. A lot more of this. So I've been doing a lot of this. I'm living in California now. I've been doing a lot of hiking. The beach is not far from here. So just trying to make every day the best possible day. That's my goal every day, is to try to make it the best possible day.
That's great. Is it easier for you to get interviews via like social media, FaceTime now rather than in person for you?
I would say both yes and also no. Because people aren't as busy as they were. Like before, people had events to go to, and they had other things to do. They were flying all over the world, so that makes it easier. But I think it's also harder because there's more people that are asking for their time right now in terms of doing these interviews. It's just a matter of if they're able to balance all of that stuff. But I will say that I've probably had access to more interviews now than probably ever, because before it used to be drive to the airport, fly to a city, get a hotel, set up the interviews. Now it's just like, I'll send you a link, click on it, and we'll go from there.
That's cool. So what inspired you to start doing broadcasting?
This has been something I've always wanted to do my entire life. And if you ask my mom, she will tell you that I had a Fisher-Price tape recorder.
Are you still there?
Yeah. Can you not hear me?
Oh, I see you now. Yeah. It froze.
Yeah, yours is cutting out a little bit. I'm hardwired in here though.
Wait, can you see me right now?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
You look great.
We're good.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
This is the beauty of doing these types of interviews.
Oh yeah, it's so I interviewed Just Incredible, and something was wrong where like it kept lagging, and I'm like, oh my god.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So this is something I learned really early on. I was trusting my Wi-Fi signal, and I was having those issues. So I'm like, all right, I got to buy myself an Ethernet cable. I got to buy the little thing to plug into the laptop. So now my internet's like lightning fast here.
That's super good. Oh, so when with broadcasting, because I know your dream was to do pro wrestling when you were younger. What made you make the switch to like stop doing pro wrestling and full on broadcasting? Did you not see a bright future in pro wrestling that made you want to quit, or like what was it that made you decide to do the huge switch?
So let me continue the story that we got cut off because of our terrible internet connection here. My mom will tell you that when I was 4 years old, I had a Fisher Price tape recorder, and I would record myself pretending to be a radio broadcaster on like cassette tapes. So that's where it began for me. And I just always want to have a job that, oh, look, you got your dog making a cameo here.
Oh yeah.
Who's this?
Fluffy. My girlfriend actually dyed her. I don't know why. The safe way though.
Oh, hi, Fluffy.
She's pink. Oh.
Wow, she is pink. Wow. So my whole thing is I didn't want a job that felt like a job. And I had a high school communication studies class where we went out and like filmed a TV show every week. And I was just so like excited that was like a possibility, like that someone out there was doing that job. And I thought, well, if someone else can have that job, then maybe I can also have that job. Went to college for communication studies. And in my senior year had like this epiphany, like, oh my God, when we graduate, we're going to have to go to work for the rest of our life. And in that moment, I decided I didn't want to dislike what I did. I didn't want to be one of those people who couldn't enjoy Sunday because Monday was the next day. So I reached out to every radio station, every TV station in my college town, asking if I could just come in and see how it was done in the real world, just see if I could volunteer. And I got my very first job volunteering at a TV station. This other radio station said, we don't take on volunteers. How would you like a job? And my broadcasting career kind of started from there. And to answer your other question, yeah, I was super passionate about pro wrestling. I've been a fan my whole life, became a mega fan in the Attitude Era. I was a backyard wrestler in high school. And I was like, I want to be a pro wrestler. And I was training to be a pro wrestler while I was in college, and just kind of decided in that moment that it couldn't be wrestling school and school. Like I wanted to be able to give 100% of myself to something. So I was training to be a wrestler that summer. And then when it came time to go back to school that fall, I kind of just deciding like, can I do both? Do I really want to do both? No, I want to be able to give 100% of myself to whatever it is that I'm doing. And I thought wrestling would always be there. Yeah. So I continued with my broadcasting career, and I feel really fortunate, man, that I'm able to have my foot firmly planted in the broadcasting world, and I can just kind of like dip my toe into wrestling. You know, I'm a ring announcer sometimes. I attend a lot of shows as a fan. I'm fortunate that I can like do a little bit of both now.
Do you get recognized now when you go to the shows? Like, are people like, oh, you're Chris Van Vliet? Does that happen a lot for you?
It's the weirdest thing. Yeah, like, because you do these in such like a vacuum. Like, you and I are having this conversation right now, which is awesome. But in reality, like, you're sitting in your apartment, I'm sitting in my apartment, and like, it's just so weird that like we're doing this where it's just like I'm doing this on my side and you're doing this on your side. It's so weird thinking this does in fact go out to thousands of people, sometimes millions of people online. So when AEW first started running their pay-per-views, you know, I was going to those events as a fan, and there'd be times when I like was getting recognized so much that it was just like surprising to me. And it is the coolest thing, Jared. It is the coolest thing to know that other people share the same passion that we share.
So when you very started broadcasting, you probably can tell off how I'm talking. Did you have troubles with flowing things properly and overthinking your thoughts in the very beginning? Because now you're very good at talking. Any person you talk to is just super smooth. It's fluid. I've seen some interviews where the wrestler might not be reacting really good, but you always are so good at keeping it together. Did you ever have troubles that in the beginning, or is that what would your advice be on to getting better at that, to be able to talk very fluid?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And 100%, yes, no broadcaster is good for their first like 5 or 10 years. So I think the biggest thing for me was to stop thinking of these as interviews. and just starting to think about them as conversations. Because I think a lot of people will think of them as interviews with a capital I, and then they'll freak themselves out because you're like, you've written down all these questions and all these thoughts that you want. And then you're thinking, all right, I've asked this, then I got to ask this, and I got to ask this. If you and I were to just run into each other at the mall, like if malls were still a thing that we could go to, if you and I just ran into each other, you wouldn't be like, okay, all right, I just ran into Chris. I got to ask him about this, then this, and then this. You would just have a conversation. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is to not think of them as interviews, but to think of them as conversations. And I think that the biggest piece of advice that any interviewer should take is simple. It's one word: listen. And that's the biggest thing that I think that people don't do. They're so caught up with what am I going to talk about next that they're missing what's going on in this current moment. And sometimes you can miss out on something like that's a big thing. Like maybe they're talking about a subject you never thought they'd talk about. If you're not actually listening in that moment, you're not able to go down that path with them and ask a follow-up question.
Yeah. So I know the one interview that you did that like blew up the most, that got into a lot of people's suggestion boxes, is the one with Big Show. That was the interview that got me to notice you. I think, how many years ago? That was a few years ago, right? Like 5
That was like, I think that was 2016.
Yeah. So how did you get to the point where now you interview any wrestler? Like, do you have the ability to like just message any wrestler and get the interview? Or because I know when you started, you were with Deca Drive, and that's how you got your interviews. What about now? What's it like, your process now of getting interviews?
I wish I could just, send a DM to like AJ Styles and be like, hey man, want to do an interview? And that does happen with some of my friends who are wrestlers. But when you're trying to set up interviews with WWE or AEW, you've got to go through the correct channels. In the same way that if you were setting up an interview with a football player or a Major League Baseball star, you'd have to go through the team or the leagues. So that's how most of my interviews happen. And that's how most interviews, period, happen. There's someone that's like vetting them. But with that said, some of my favorite interviews from the last few years have been just like someone who's sent me a message and said, hey, I listened to your show. Could I be a guest sometime? Like that happened with Will Ospreay. That happened with David Benoit. I found out that Tyson Kidd is a big fan of my show. It's like, I gotta just like appreciate how cool that is. It's really cool to be able to hear that.
Oh yeah. It's when you email, because you've had so many wrestlers from AEW and WWE, when you email the PR team, do they ever? I fear that they might think, oh, this person again. Does that ever happen, or is that just something that goes through my head? Like if you message them, do they go, oh, 5th time in a month, like trying to get interviews? Like how does that work?
I'd like to think it's an exchange, right? Like, and I think that this is the biggest thing. What value can you bring? And it's obvious the value that they're bringing you. They're giving you, a talent that you'd like to speak with and have on your show. But what can you bring to them? And I think that if you can present this, and this isn't just with interviews, and this certainly isn't just with wrestling interviews, this is just life in general. If you can provide value for someone, then they're going to feel like there's an exchange there, that they're willing to give you what you're asking for. So I think it's really important to say, kind of like the message you sent me, like, hey, I have X amount of followers on TikTok. Here's where things can go from there. It's like, okay, cool. That person's going to give you an hour of their time or half an hour of your time or whatever. What are you going to give them?
Yeah. Thank you. And
what are we watching in the background here? Implosive?
Wait, what'd you say?
Is it implosive?
Did you?
There it is. I see it.
Oh, yeah, Logan Paul. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, of course, yeah. This might be why our internet connection's lagging, because all this is taking your internet connection.
That is true. Hold on. Hope that's not it. Oh, there we go. You should interview him sometime.
Oh, my gosh, I'd love to interview him. Yeah. How do we make this happen?
Oh, I tried to send him his manager's on Instagram.
Impulsive. I said it wrong. I don't know why I said implausive. Impulsive, yes.
Yeah, I tried to email his manager one time, but they don't ever reply. I feel like they probably get so many that.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine how many messages they get.
When you get to interview wrestlers, So for me, sometimes you have to pay for like the bigger ones. Is that the same for you, or does your news channel usually do all that for you?
No, I've never paid for an interview, and my news channel hasn't either. Like that's actually a pretty big thing in the journalism world. that you're not paying for interviews. Like, I don't think the Today Show or Good Morning America are paying for interviews, whereas maybe like a TMZ might pay for an interview. But yeah, that's like a pretty, it's an interesting line in the journalism world where I don't know if you decide to cross it, it absolutely makes sense. But it's something that I'd rather say, look, I'm bringing tremendous value to you. You're bringing tremendous value to me. Like, this is a pretty good agreement for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to start a broadcasting school this summer. I know I just have to get a certain amount of money to at least start it off in St. Louis at their broadcasting center. And then, because I've always done YouTube and I was doing pro wrestling too. And then I saw this one kid at my school snap his arm like this, went through there. And I was like, maybe I don't want to risk that happening. So I kind of decided to go the broadcasting route. And I've always my stepmom's best friend Monica, she does Fox 2 News, like the traffic stuff, and so I've always loved that. She let me go on there when I was like 9 years old, and I've always loved it. And doing YouTube since I was 9 years old, it's all I really know. And like you said, I fear of working a job I don't want to work, because I've always made every job something I love. Right now, I'm not the happiest at my job, because now I'm working at a factory in a way, like at the GM plant where they make cars, but I'm doing it because I know it will give me a better future to be able to do broadcasting in a way. So,
well, we live in a different world now. I don't know if you necessarily need to go to broadcasting school anymore. Yeah, I mean, you've created what you've created on your own. You can go out and start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook page, TikTok, whatever it happens to be. I don't necessarily know that you need to go to formal broadcasting school unless your goal is to like be on the news. I don't know if you need to go to broadcasting school to be a radio host or a TV host now.
Really? I don't know what I want to do. I kind of like Logan Paul. I kind of want to do everything. I don't have like a set stone, because like part of me, I want to do radio. Part of me wants to do the news, where you get to go on TV and talk about the weather and different type of things like that. And then another part of me is doing interviews with wrestlers. And then, there's so much in the broadcasting world. There's just so much. It's so hard to pick one. And I feel like if I get a degree, then every door is open rather than just one door, if that makes sense. Is that true? You know more about that.
You'll still have to find your niche. And you'll find that when you go to broadcasting school, the people with a little bit more personality, they might be your weather guy. The people who love sports, that might be your sportscaster. And the people who are die hard about the news, those are usually your news anchors. But I would say you will end up finding the thing that you're drawn to. And like I said, maybe it doesn't mean you need to go to to broadcasting school. Maybe it means you just keep going on your path here and figuring it out on your own.
Thank you. How did AEW get a hold of you, by the way? Did they just see all your interviews and really like it and wanted to bring you on board?
Well, I'd done a bunch of interviews with people with AEW, and I think it was an interview with Chris Jericho that led to an interview with Tony Khan. Then I did an interview with Cody Rhodes. Then I did an interview with the Young Bucks. And when you're looking at the people who are at the top of AEW in terms of making the big decisions there, those were the right people to be in front of. And as they were planning their first episode of Dynamite, I got a message from them that said, hey, would you like to join us on our first episode of Dynamite, October 2nd, Washington, D.C. And none of that had been announced at that point. So they were really trusting me that hey, if you'd like to be part of this, you can be. We're inviting you to. And they're also giving me some fairly sensitive information at that point. So that was where that's how it all came together. I was invited to be part of that first show. I was fortunate to be part of a show a few weeks later as well. And man, what an exciting time to be a wrestling fan. This is, to have so many options that we have. It's obviously a weird time in the world right now, but to have this many options and to have this much talent, man, it's very, very cool.
Were you nervous when you were doing the ring announcing? Because obviously that's a lot different than just one-on-one with one wrestler. You're now in front of 20,000, so many people. What was that experience like for you?
It was pretty crazy to walk out there and look up in this stadium that was completely full and the crowd's just buzzing. There was so much energy and so much excitement in the air because this was the first episode of wrestling on TNT in almost 20 years. So I don't know if I was nervous so much as just excited. I had a real nervous energy. You could just feel that buzz. But I've done a lot of hosting in my life. Like I think a lot of people know me from doing the wrestling interviews and like sitting with a wrestler next to me. But most of my career has been spent speaking to a camera, which is how that segment started. Me speaking to a camera, and then I turned to Jay and Silent Bob, and we, kind of did the segment from there. It was fun. And as a wrestling fan, to be part of something like that, a tiny little 0.0001% of that show, it was really cool to be part of history.
That's awesome. Obviously you wanted to be that ever since you were a kid. What does your family think of your whole career on how you get to do all these things with these wrestlers and you get to ring announce for AEW? How proud are they for you? Because that must be amazing.
I think my parents are so proud that I figured out what it was that I loved, and I figured out what I was passionate about early on, and I haven't let anything stand in my way. I've basically looked at the people who I wanted to have the job that they had and just figured out like, okay, they're here. How can I get there? And I read a lot of bios when I was in high school and college, and I would figure out, okay, what college did they go to? Or where did they intern? Or where did they volunteer? And I was starting to see a lot of things that were in common with all these people. And I just like forged my own path. And look, this is something kind of piggybacks off what we were just talking about, Jared, is no two people have the same path in life and certainly not in broadcasting. So I kind of found my own path, and my parents, I think, are really proud of what I've done. I will say, though, my parents are not wrestling fans.
Really?
At all. Like my dad does not like wrestling. When I was watching it in high school, he would get very angry, like stand in front of the TV and be, "You are not watching this." It took him a while, but he finally turned the corner and kind of went, "All right, you can watch it. I don't need to watch it, but you can if you want."
That's awesome. Is there a favorite interview that you've ever done with a wrestler that comes to mind?
It's hard. It's kind of like a parent choosing their favorite child, but I've been such a big fan of The Rock. The Rock has meant so much to me growing up. He was my favorite wrestler in the 90s, and watching what he's done with his career now, he's so inspirational. So The Rock, for sure. And they always say you shouldn't meet your heroes. But if your hero happens to be Dwayne Johnson, you should 100% meet your hero, because he's kind and he's charismatic and he's funny and he's aware. He's self-aware enough to know that this moment is an important moment for you. And he makes you feel special in that moment. And that's such a rare quality to see in anyone, let alone in a celebrity. So The Rock, for sure. And I hope, I got my fingers crossed that I can interview The Rock again one day.
Oh, yeah. I know in one of his interviews, you asked him if there was anything you would change about trying to be a football player. And he said sometimes the best things in life are the things that don't happen. A question for you, would you change anything about your career? Would you ever go back and pursue wrestling to see how that works? Or is that the same type of logic that you have, too, that sometimes the best things in life are the things that don't happen?
I firmly believe that. And when The Rock said it, was like a light switch went off in my head. I was like, so true. Because think about it. If The Rock had gone on to have an NFL career, it might have been 3 or 5 or 10 years. Who knows if he'd be doing acting now? Who knows if that would even happen? Maybe he would have had a terrible injury. So I think that everything in life does happen for a reason, for better or for worse. So I wouldn't change anything about my path. I did pursue wrestling. I went to wrestling school. I can take some bumps. I can run the ropes. Everybody knows I can get chopped. They've all seen that video.
Yeah, but
Tyler Breeze and Sean Spears. I wouldn't change anything, because everything that's happened in my life has led up to me being the person that I am right now as I sit here talking to you. And if I had pursued a wrestling career, I don't know what would have happened. Wrestling wasn't what it was when I went to wrestling school in 2003. Wrestling wasn't, how it is now. The independent wrestling circuit wasn't really built the way that it's built now. So I don't know if it really would have been the right path for me. I'm happy that my path has led me to, being where I am now and pursuing what I'm pursuing.
That's awesome. Did you ever have any moments where, I know for me as a YouTuber, I have these moments where like things aren't going the right way, so you start self-doubting you, or you have a so what now moment. Have you ever had moments in your journey of broadcasting where things aren't going the way that you wanted them to, and so you start self-doubting yourself, or you don't know what if it was going to work out? Did you ever have moments like that at all? And if you did, how did you overcome those moments to keep pushing forward?
I think it's shifted a lot more since I've been focusing more on YouTube and my podcast. But when you're doing television, it's kind of done like I was talking about before in a vacuum. You're just in a studio with your co-host and a cameraman and a floor director, and you don't really think about the people who are watching it. And you know, the ratings, you don't really see them. You don't see them all the time. Whereas when you post a YouTube video that you've put so much time and so much effort into, and it doesn't get the response that you expected it to, that can be really disheartening sometimes, because you've put hours and sometimes days or weeks into something and it kind of falls flat on the expectations that you had. So my way around that is I've just started going, look, I'm making content for me. I'm making content that I like. And if other people happen to also like it, then great. If they don't, at least I know I'm making the most important person in my audience happy, which is me. Because if you're not enjoying the stuff that you're making, you might as well just give up right now.
Yeah. When you have been interviewing people, did you ever have moments where it wasn't really going the best way, or it wasn't turning out, they weren't really responsive towards you, so you didn't really know how to handle an interview? Have you ever had those like awkward moments in interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that I've kept in mind is the interview doesn't start when you hit record. The interview starts like either the second the Skype call, Zoom call begins, or if it's an in-person interview, the second you walk into the room. And I think that that's a big thing to like set the tone for how the interview is going to be. And if your energy can be bigger than their energy, maybe you can somehow like win over their awkwardness or win over the way that they're, you know, maybe not warming up to you. Maybe you can kind of win them over with that.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you're in a situation where you have to ask an awkward question, I would just try to do it in the most respectful way that you possibly can. And that's kind of where the moments that I've had, you know, if there's been an awkward moment, I'm going to mostly blame myself for those moments. There's two people in an interview. And if you're not in this together, if you're not dancing together, you're not going to have a great conversation.
Yeah. Is there anybody that you want to interview in the future?
There's a bunch of people that I want to interview. And if we're talking in the wrestling world, the very top of that list is Vince McMahon. I'd love to have a conversation with Vince McMahon. Just figure out what makes him tick. Like figure out what gets Vince McMahon excited, especially after doing this for so long. Because think about it. If Vince McMahon hadn't created this incredible thing called the World Wrestling Federation at the time, you and I wouldn't be sitting here, certainly, you know, having this conversation. I'd love to talk to, like, Obama would be an amazing interview. I would love to just kind of pick his brain, figure out, you know, what makes him tick. I'd love to talk to Oprah. Oprah would be a fascinating conversation. And I think that if you're a podcaster, you've got to be inspired by what Joe Rogan has built. And it would just be so great to just have a drink with Joe Rogan and just figure out like what is it that goes into his thoughts every single day. Because the thing I've realized is there is certain traits that all successful people have. All successful people have similar habits and traits. And it's just cool to like kind of pick those out and go, all those people who are high achievers are all doing similar things.
Oh yeah. I feel like Vince, I wish he did more interviews because he's so smart and interesting, and I wish there was just the only things I ever found were like from the 1998, and I'm like, man, just see him actually like talk and like explain why he does certain things. It'd just be so fascinating. But
I agree. Vince would be a fascinating conversation.
Oh yeah, the last one I think he did was with Stone Cold, and that was in 2015.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Hopefully he does more because I would love to see those. You should. Hopefully you can get one day. That'd be awesome.
Man, I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Well, do you think Tony Khan and Vince have a lot in common? I mean, you talked to Tony Khan, not Vince, but off of kind of what you do know. Do you think they have a lot in common?
I would have to think so. And again, I don't know Vince personally, and I've had, you know, a great conversation with Tony Khan when he was on my show. Both of them are brilliant. Both of them are super smart. And I think both of them also look at the world in a way that, you know, the average person doesn't look at the world. And that's why they've been able to create the amazing products that they create. I also know that they both have great interpersonal skills, like both super charismatic. And I don't think you can be a leader at that level if you don't have great personal skills. I think that we're just starting to scratch the surface of what Tony Khan is capable of. I mean, we're only a little over a year into AEW being on television. I think that we're going to start to we're going to look back at this time as like, oh, that was cool that AEW got their start and they really somehow made it work during COVID. But I think in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be looking back and going, wow, what they've built is amazing. And on the flip side of that, I think we're also going to look at what WWE will turn into in 5 and 10 years and go, man, I didn't think this thing could get any bigger, but WWE, the global brand, just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, yeah. So when you got the interviews, hold on, I'm going to let my dog
Fluffy wants to be part of the conversation.
He's trying to get out of the room for some reason because my girlfriend's out there. Hold on 1 second. Getting antsy. Speaking of Sammy Guevara, is he someone that you had to go through the PR team with too?
Well, that was a long time ago. So before AEW started on television, I was able to do interviews with people that were just my friends or people that I could reach out to on Instagram. So I just sent him a message. I happened to be going to Houston. My dad and I have this great tradition every year of going to a different Major League Baseball stadium. We happened to be going to a Houston Astros game. And I just said, hey, man, you live in Houston, right? Let's do an interview. I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to. And then he ended up featuring me on his vlog. I had him on my show. It was like this great collaboration.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's definitely someone who has inspired me too at YouTube, and it's super cool. There's some wrestlers who don't really respond to fans much on, like, especially in DMs, and Sammy Guevara has been someone who's always responding to fans, and that's something I really admire, because even when back when I had my old channel before that was terminated, I always made it a priority to reply to everybody. I try my best to, and even on my TikTok. And so it's super inspiring to see someone who is at that level who still, it shows how much he really cares, you know. It shows that he's not in it for different reasons. Not saying that they are, but, you know, it shows that he cares about his fans a lot, and it means a lot to us.
Sammy's a good dude, and like he came to my hotel, which wasn't that close to where he lived. Like he drove all the way to my hotel and had the interview with me there. Like he's a great dude, and I think that's the type of guy who's a future world champion. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. In your own opinion, so do you think if he ever does go to WWE, do you think I know he'll do super good on NXT with Triple H. Do you think Vince would give him the same push, in your own opinion?
Oh, geez. I don't think Sammy Guevara is leaving AEW. They've built so much with him, and he has such a bright future. I mean, when Jim Ross is on commentary comparing Sammy Guevara to the late, great Eddie Guerrero, I don't think that they're going to let him go.
That's good. I hope he's world champion, because he's my favorite on AEW.
I think it's just a matter of time. Maybe it's not, in the next year or 2 or 3, but I think it's just a matter of time till we start seeing some of those younger guys. And it's not just Sammy. It's Sammy and MJF, Jungle Boy. I think that there's a boatload of talent that are in their mid to late 20s that are going to be breaking out to that next level within the next 5-ish years.
How much fun was that MJF interview? Because that was so funny. I love that interview.
It's not fun to be part of. I mean, fun to watch back, but man, he's not a very nice guy. And people are like, I'd love to see you do another interview with him. And I'm like, I would not like to see that at all.
Hey, wow. Hold on 1 second. I have one question I really wanted to ask you.
Bring it. Let's hear it.
Oh, yeah, so I saw in your bio on your YouTube channel, you like to not, and you even mentioned it earlier, your interviews are very conversational. Why do you think that translates to wrestling fans so much? Because I feel like especially me as a viewer watching your interviews, I can just relate and watch your interview much more entertaining than watching a guy who question. What do you think is the reason behind that makes your interview, it's still an interview, but it makes it so much better?
Well, I think it sounds conversational, and I think that sounds like the real types of conversations that we have in our everyday life. Yeah. So, and this is what's so great about some of the best podcasters, like a Joe Rogan, is it kind of just feels like you're eavesdropping on a conversation that people are having. And that's what I've always loved about it. And the broadcasters that I looked up to early on in my career and broadcasters that I still look up to are the ones that don't feel like they're broadcasters. Because turn on the news in any city that you live in, and you're going to see, welcome to the 6 o'clock news. I'm Chris Van Vliet, right? And no one talks like that. No one looks like that when they talk. So I wanted something that I was just always inspired by, conversations that sounded like conversations and interviews that didn't sound like interviews. So if someone says something in the interview that's interesting to me, I want to go down that path with them, and I want to follow up and find out more about that. And I think that too often the interviews that we don't like and we don't respond to are the ones that just sound like an interview. So I've just always been really interested in having something that feels a little bit more organic.
That's good. With Batista, that was really cool when you guys were having an interview and the time was up and he still gave you extra time. I mean, what a nice guy. I can't believe that. I honestly can't believe. That was a short interview. It was like a 3-minute interview. And I just so desperately wanted to know, is he coming back to WWE? So I started the question. They cut me off. And he's just like, no, he has time for one more. Oh! Yeah, that was a really, really cool thing. Have you ever had an interview that you were about to get to that question that you really want to ask, like, oh, time's up, and there wasn't someone like Batista who couldn't extend that time, and then you have to go home and being like, man, if only I asked that question. Have you had a moment like that in your interview?
Usually they're pretty good. At like letting you know you've got time for one more question. Like someone off camera will be like, one more. Usually that's when you can like kind of like pace your interview. I'm going to ask this question. I'm probably going to ask this. Then I'll ask this and I'll save this other question for the end. I have had it though, where I start a question and they're super tight on time and their publicist like steps in or someone steps in and goes, sorry, interview's over. And I'm like, oh, but I'd say that most of the time, the interviews that I've had in the past, I'd say most of them, I've asked everything I've wanted to ask. Although I've definitely had times, especially on YouTube, where I'll post something and I didn't think to ask whatever it is. And all the comments start coming in like, what about this? Did you ask about this? How come you didn't ask about this? And I'm like, sorry guys, I'll let you down.
All right, next time. So speaking of the Batista interview, that one seems a lot more, it wasn't your typical, they come to your hotel, you go to their hotel interview. So for someone who's like me, who I don't really have the connections that you do, how do you even get an interview with a Batista or The Rock? Is that, for someone who's like me, it seems impossible, but obviously anything is possible. So like, what would be the right steps for me to take to maybe in a year to 2 years get to that level of being able to get to an interview like that? Because it seemed like you had to go through a lot because that was like in a whole studio type thing.
Yeah. Well, look, anything is possible. Absolutely. And 1000%, anything is possible. Those interviews were set up through my TV station. So I was working for the Fox station in Miami. Before that, I was at the CBS affiliate in Cleveland. Before that, I was hosting a show in Toronto. So those interviews were set up through the movie studio because I worked for the TV station. So while I only posted the interview with Batista, I also interviewed everybody else from the James Bond movie that day. So I also interviewed Daniel Craig that day. I interviewed Christoph Waltz that day, and I interviewed Batista. So that was like promotion for the film, which was about to come out. And that was actually in Mexico City. They flew us to Mexico City. We did that interview. The next day was the world premiere. We were on the red carpet in Mexico City. And again, I got to interview Daniel Craig again, Christoph Waltz again, Dave Batista again. So it's absolutely possible, but it goes back to what we talked about earlier. What kind of value can you bring? TV, the value is you're on TV and you've got a big platform and a big audience to be able to show this to people. If you're someone like a Logan Paul or like a Joe Rogan and your platform is hundreds of millions of people, well, then that's where the value comes there.
So for someone at my size, it would be a lot harder to do those type of interviews versus the Sammy Guevara interviews in a way. If that
I would say you got to just work up to it. I think that you just got to work up to that level. I feel like I still have to work up to that level. It's not like I can just send a message to Daniel Craig and go, hey man, let's have a conversation. There needs to be some sort of a give and take there.
Yeah. One person who I got to interview who I was super surprised, like I was really excited to meet him, and he was just probably like such a nice guy, was Heath Slater, and you even got to interview him. He's such a nice guy, like so personable and open, and hopefully we get to see him come back and like me and him talked about him coming back and doing like fulfilling the prophecy and like 3MB triple threat WWE title match, and he even told me, he goes, I have 3 ideas, but I'll never tell no one. I'll pitch them, but I'll never tell nobody. I'm like, he's so nice. Did you have fun talking to him?
Oh, he was great. And I was really fortunate to be one of the first people that he spoke with after he got released from WWE. And even though he was released from WWE, obviously his dream job that he was there doing for, his entire career, he just had this warm, positive energy about him and just so confident that everything was going to work out. And we've seen him do some great stuff in Impact Wrestling. And I think that once these crowds come back and once the shows are able to start touring again, that's when you're going to start to see people like Heath Slater and Matt Cardona. And I mean, God, the list goes on and on and on of all the people that were released that are super talented. I think that that's when we're going to start to see them really hit their stride.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So in your own experience with you doing broadcasting, why do you think people like, because I've always noticed this. So I always thought they would try to put their top people in the big interviews. I feel like I always see Seth Rollins in all the interviews and like the little videos and stuff on like their network, but they never ever really use Roman Reigns. And like Roman Reigns is the guy. So like, why do you think they don't use him as much? Do you think they try to keep him for special events in a way? Like special.
I would have to think currently they're not using Roman Reigns because he's a bad guy. I would think that that's the current message behind this. But Seth and Roman, I think, are like definitely the big faces of the company right now. Roman was getting a big push in terms of doing media stuff, I guess 2 years ago when he was in the movie with The Rock. Like he was everywhere. Roman Reigns was on Entertainment Tonight and Extra and Access Hollywood. And I just think that it goes in cycles. I think when Roman's a good guy again, we'll probably see him being the face of more stuff again.
Yeah. Do you like his heel run?
I do. I like his heel run. I didn't expect us to, like him as a heel, but this is something that should have happened years ago. Oh, yeah. Imagine Roman Reigns turning heel with Paul Heyman and a crowd was there. I feel like this was such a missed opportunity a year or 2 or 5 ago.
Oh yeah. I've loved Roman Reigns since the day he debuted. It was Dean. Everybody thought Dean was the guy. I remember like when they first debuted, everyone was super on Dean, and I was always like, "This is Roman. Roman's gonna be the guy. Roman's gonna be the guy." And then Roman becomes the guy, my favorite guy on the Shield. And then they're all great, but I always you always got your favorite. Roman was always my favorite. So it's so cool to see how his career also became like how much he's done, and he's done so much in such little time. Like it's so crazy.
Well, they've all become super successful in their own right. Whether it's Jon Moxley, whether it's Roman Reigns, or whether it's Seth Rollins, they've all become insanely popular and both insanely just great at what they're doing. All world champions.
Oh yeah. Do you think ever in one day do you see Jon Moxley coming back to WWE at one point?
I don't think so. I mean, we heard his pretty honest thoughts after he left WWE when he was on Talk Is Jericho. And it just sounded like they were really stifling his creativity there. And it wasn't a place that he was happy. And I was backstage with John in AEW, and he certainly seems a lot happier. I mean, look how much better his promos are in AEW compared to how they were in WWE. I will say this, because you asked about Sammy Guevara going to WWE and Jon Moxley going to WWE. I think we're all going to be shocked one day when someone does leave AEW and goes to WWE, because we've been talking so much about the reverse. Every time someone's contract is up in WWE, it's like, are they going to sign with AEW? And the answer to that a lot of times has been yes. But there's going to be a time when these 3-year deals that all these guys have signed are up at the end of this year. Someone, I think, is going to make a jump from AEW to WWE. We're all going to be really shocked, I think.
Yeah, it definitely will. Hey, did you watch Raw last night?
I watched a little bit of Raw last night, and I saw Randy Orton's new mask.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool. Did you see the Ricochet and AJ Styles stuff?
I did not. No. What did I miss?
So Ricochet is one of my favorite wrestlers, which you definitely should interview.
Mine too, yeah.
I remember he had that match with Lesnar last year, and I was so excited. I thought there was so much potential there with Ricochet, because Ricochet can do literally anything. He can sell anything. He could do a backflip into an F5. I thought that'd be a perfect ending. It was such a missed opportunity, and then he lost to Riddick Moss, and then kind of fell off. And I got nervous as a Ricochet fan, but he had such an impressive match with AJ Styles. He dominated the whole match, and then he didn't win, but he put on such a good showing. So it's like, I'm hoping this year they put him back up there, put him back in that, maybe U.S. title scene and WWE title scene again. But it looks good that he had a really good showing with AJ last night.
Oh man, Ricochet is one of the most talented wrestlers on the face of the planet. And AJ, I mean, makes anyone who he's in the ring with look good. I mean, you or I could have a match with AJ Styles, and it would be a 5-star match. That's how good AJ is.
Oh yeah. Hey, this was one big question I wanted to ask you. If you got a call, like with everything that you're going on right now in your life, if you got a call like next week, next month, and Triple H said, "Hey, we would like you to come over, do every month, do the kickoff panels and do some announcing here and there, ring announcing," would you take that offer?
I don't know. That's a really good question, and I honestly don't know, because I like the freedom that I have now to talk to someone from New Japan, AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor. Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I just worked for WWE. And my friend Sam Roberts does that. I mean, he does an amazing job hosting those panels. But his coverage now is just mostly focused on WWE, which is fine. I mean, we all grew up watching WWE. Yeah. But I don't want to just be the wrestling broadcaster. And my whole career has been being just a broadcaster, not with the word wrestling in front of it. So I would have to think very long and very hard about that. But I'm really happy doing what I'm doing now. And I'm actually excited to pursue opportunities that aren't just wrestling. That's why my podcast is called Insight, because I want to be able to get insight from everybody, not just wrestlers. It's cool being able to hear all the things that they do and how they got to where they're at. But I want to talk to people who are the best at what they do. Whatever it is that they do.
Hey, maybe one day you can do Jake Paul, Logan Paul. That'd be pretty insane.
Maybe one day. Maybe. I mean, it's actually probably possible. I'm sure that I've covered a lot of different MMA events, covered a lot of different UFC events. I'm sure one day our paths are going to cross. So
that'd be awesome.
Who knows?
Oh yeah. But Todd Grisham? Have you heard of?
Of course, yeah.
I interviewed him, and he actually called the KSI and Logan Paul fight, the second fight, the no head guard fight, and he was so impressed. And their style of promoting that fight is so different than regular boxing, because he said in regular boxing they have to go through the commission and everything. When it comes to them, all they wanted to do is just throw them on stage. They're like, we're not going through all these long corporate people talking. Just put them on stage. It's all they want.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool that they're in that world, but it's. They want to put them on the stage right away, no corporate.
And they're not Logan Paul and Jake Paul aren't just in that world as boxers. They are boxers, which is they're good at it, which has been so cool to see. Now, let me ask you this. How'd you set up that interview with Todd Grisham?
I just DM'd them. That's how I get a lot of them. I just DM them or email them, and
I love it.
That they reply. I try to just email as many people as I can, really, and it's always the best when it's people like you who I actually watch and
oh wow,
investment with. So it's this. That's why sometimes I might be stumbling over my words, because it's a big interview for me, and I got to get to that level to not do that. But it was cool when Todd Grisham did it, because I was like, this is Todd Grisham. He called my favorite YouTuber fights. I watched them when I was a kid. That's so surreal to me too. Me and you, how crazy is it that we're talking we watch these people, and now we're talking to these people. It's so crazy. I would have not thought it a year ago. I remember my teacher saying, "Oh, you're not gonna be a wrestler. You're not gonna be a YouTuber." Literally in my meetings, they would be like, "So what do you want to be?" I'd be like, "A YouTuber." Ever since 4th grade, I started in 4th grade, and I've been graduated for 4 years, and I was like a YouTuber. Before YouTuber made money, that's all I wanted to do. And now my teachers on Facebook are like, "You're going to be interviewing Jake the Snake Roberts? Oh my God, I watched them. I'm so proud of you." And I was like, you should have believed in me back then, but thank you so much. It's just, it's crazy. That's why I always tell people, no matter what any teacher says or anybody says in general, you should always go for what you want to do. Because no matter what, I feel like what we do with interviewing wrestlers, it seems so unrealistic, but it's not. And I hate that people think that, you know? I hate when people who should be pushing you. That's why I hope one day teachers, when they say they want to be a YouTuber or anything, they don't go, find something else. You're going to college. You know, I hope they can actually treat YouTube like college. Be like, okay, cool. So let's figure out, what do you like? Like, you know, like, I feel like I hope we can get to that point.
I don't think teachers should be discouraging people from doing anything. If that's something that they're passionate about, there is money to be made in absolutely anything now. You know, we walk around with these supercomputers in our pocket. If you can find a way to help help that get monetized, the thing that you're passionate about, if you can monetize that, I think you can live a much better life than someone who went to college and is now working some job they don't enjoy going to.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing, because like anyone can go to college and get a degree. Oh, and this was my biggest thing, is when teachers would tell me, they'd be like, you got to go get a degree to be successful. But I always thought, here was my comparison with wrestling school and a college. So they said, oh, you go to wrestling school, you won't make it, you know, like the unrealistic expectations. I go, well, I can go and get a degree. That still doesn't mean I'm going to go get a job, you know, like, why not go get something that I love? And because if I go get a degree for something I don't like, I'm most likely not going to put all my passion into it. But if I go and do something I love, I'm going to put all my passion into it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know. That's just something that always made me angry, is that teachers would like try to not push you to your dreams because they're not realistic. And now it's cool to show them that it is realistic. And and I hope that the teachers from my school takes this as inspiration too, to be like, well,
passion is the secret sauce of life.
Yeah, it really is. It's like Sammy Guevara says. I know in all of his vlogs, he always has motivational things all the time. I know. Did you know he used to be told back in his earlier vlogs, and there were people in his vlogs who would say that, oh, you're just an indie guy, you won't make it nowhere. And then he's in AEW and with Chris Jericho. Like, that's why I love Sammy's vlogs, is because you literally can watch his career. It's like, it's so crazy. Speaking of, since you're a YouTuber too, how cool is that as a gimmick for Sammy Guevara to be a YouTuber and integrate that into wrestling? That's like never been done except Zack Ryder, but Sammy's actually vlogging in the ring.
Yeah, I think the only other one that comes kind of close to that is Alex Shelley used to have a gimmick where he was the paparazzi and he would set up a camera on the side of the ring and like watch his matches. But the fact that Sammy can be like filming in the ring and then the next week you see that in his vlog. I
know.
That's so cool.
It really is. He pulling the camera and then you can watch it and it's like, that's crazy.
We're living in a time right now where the lines are very blurred in wrestling. Like what is quote unquote real and what is quote unquote fake. And the lines are so blurred right now. And Sammy, I think, does a really good example of being able to blur those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want your take on this, actually, since you were just talking about lines are blurred. There's a lot of heat to this, so I don't know what your opinion is, but my personal opinion is I'm actually excited for Goldberg and McIntyre because I don't like predictable stuff. And the fact that all my friends hate it, and I'm like, dude, we honestly don't know if Goldberg's going to win. We don't know if Drew's going to win. That's awesome. You should, why, every time we watch, it's like, yeah, Drew's winning, Drew winning. Like, this gives you that, I miss that feeling of not knowing who's going to win. So seeing Goldberg, because Goldberg beat The Fiend, and we all thought Fiend was going to get put over, it gives me the feeling of being on my seat, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think the reason they keep bringing Goldberg back for these big matches is it gets people talking. Whether you like it or you don't like it, it gets people talking. And I think that that's what's really important about creating a big storyline is having people talk. Whether you love it or you hate it, you still feel something. And I think that that's what's really important here. Goldberg has a great reputation of beating a lot of younger guys. Is he going to beat Drew McIntyre?
I hope not.
I would probably think not.
Yeah.
Which then might be like kind of a little bit of a passing of the torch moment. You know, like Drew has been the chosen one for many, many years. Now he finally has the championship. If Drew wins, I think that's a big moment where it's kind of like old guard passing to new guard.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I just like how it's unpredictable. You really don't know who's gonna win because last year with the Fiend, it's like will Goldberg actually beat him and go on and fight? What is it, like Lesnar or something? I just like I like when WWE has such good booking where it brings you back to before social media and they had spoilers and you never know who's gonna win. Like right now they're uh they're booking Nakamura really good, Cesaro really good, and you don't know who's gonna win the Rumble now. It was Daniel Bryan, but now what about Nakamura and Reigns, or what about Cesaro and Reigns, or what about Lesnar or Edge? You know, I like that.
What if John Cena came back?
Oh, yeah, Cena and I want to see Cena and Reigns in the main event. That'd be pretty cool one day. They did have
Yeah.
No Mercy. That's a match.
Yeah. That I have no idea who's going to win the Rumble right now, and I love it. I think that's what's so exciting because every other year, well, not every other year, but a lot of other years, you go into it going, it's going to be this guy or this guy. It's going to be one of these two guys. Here it's like, and then you look at the women's Royal Rumble. I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. Do you think Ronda's ever gonna come back?
Yeah, I don't know if Ronda will ever come back full time, but I think that WWE knows how big of a name she is. WWE knows how big those marquee matches are when she's in it. So yeah, I think Ronda comes back, but maybe she comes back in a Brock Lesnar type role, or maybe even more limited. Like maybe we only see Ronda a handful of times a year. But I think she comes back. I don't think she's done with WWE.
And then my last question, because it's almost that time. What would your biggest advice for me moving on to the next stuff, like for broadcasting and trying to build up my name to eventually be able to, just get the interviews that I really want to get to at one point? What would your biggest advice be? And throughout this interview, what do you think I should work on the best and all that?
I think biggest thing that you should do in your career is number one, be patient. I think it's really important to realize that you're not going to be where you want to be a week from now, a month from now, or maybe even a year from now. But if you can set those goals where you're going, all right, in a month, I want to be like this. And then a year, I want to be here, 5 years, 10 years, and then start to get specific on what it is that you want. If broadcasting something that you're genuinely interested in, try to figure out what lane would work best for you. And then look at people who really inspire you in the broadcasting world and maybe try to reverse engineer how they got there. And like I was saying to you earlier, and this, you've done a great job at it during this interview, is just listen. Listen to what's going on. It doesn't need to be a capital I interview. It can be a conversation. So I think the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And the more guests that you get, the bigger the guests that you'll be able to get.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for joining. It's hard to get people to reply sometimes. So it was a shocker when you replied. I was driving. Chris, really? I'm like, oh, okay.
And here we are.
All right, here we are. Thank you so much for doing it too.
No, man, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Is there a way, whenever it's up, if I tag you in on Twitter, could you retweet it too for your friends?
Absolutely. Just tag me.
All right, thank you. And I'll send you the link to it too for you.
Please, let me know.
All right, thank you, Chris.
All right, Jared, be well. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
All right, man. See ya.
If you guys did enjoy that video, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for talking to me. It was a pleasure. It was a great honor. I had a lot of fun, and it just still sucks that the audio and all that stuff happened, but it's all good. Make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications. We got more interviews coming. I'll see you guys later. Peace.